Before the flood, the Bible describes a mysterious group of beings known as the Nephilim. They appear in only a handful of verses, yet for thousands of years they have inspired theories about giants, fallen angels, ancient warriors, and forbidden unions between heaven and earth. Genesis simply tells us that they were there. But who were they? Were the Nephilim really giants? Were they the children of fallen angels? And why does the Book of Enoch tell a much darker version of their story? To answer those questions, we have to begin with one of the strangest passages in the entire Bible. Genesis chapter 6. Humanity is increasing across the earth, and the text introduces a mysterious group called the Sons of God. These beings see that human women are beautiful and take wives for themselves. Then Genesis introduces the Nephilim. The passage is incredibly brief. It describes the Nephilim as being on the earth in those days, and also mentions mighty men of ancient times, men of renown. And almost immediately afterward, the biblical story moves toward humanity's corruption and a coming flood. That short passage has created centuries of debate, because Genesis never stops to explain exactly who these beings were. The Hebrew word commonly transliterated as Nephilim is itself difficult to interpret. Some connect it to a Hebrew root associated with falling, which is why the term is sometimes interpreted as fallen ones. Others argue that the meaning is uncertain and that translating the word directly as giants may oversimplify the original text. So the first important point is this: the Bible calls them Nephilim, but the idea that the word itself simply means giants is not as straightforward as many people assume. So where does the association with giants come from? Part of the answer appears much later in the Bible. In the Book of Numbers, Israelite spies are sent into the land of Canaan. When they return, some of them describe seeing enormous people and connect them with the Nephilim. They claim they compared with these people. They felt as small as grasshoppers. This report strongly influenced the later image of the Nephilim as giants. But there is an important detail. The passage comes from the frightened report of the spies. The biblical narrative presents their report in a context of fear and exaggeration. So while Numbers clearly connects the Nephilim tradition with unusually large and terrifying people, it does not necessarily give us a precise physical description of the beings mentioned in Genesis 6. Still, the association between the Nephilim and giants became deeply rooted in later Jewish and Christian imagination. The real mystery, however, may not be the Nephilim themselves. It may be the identity of their fathers. Genesis calls them the sons of God. There are three major interpretations. The first, and probably the most famous, is the angelic interpretation. According to this view, the sons of God were heavenly beings who abandoned their proper place and entered into relationships with human women. Their offspring became the Nephilim. Supporters of this interpretation point out that similar language for sons of God is used elsewhere in the Hebrew Bible when referring to heavenly beings, and this interpretation was widespread in some ancient Jewish traditions. But it is not the only explanation. A second interpretation says the Son of God were descendants of Seth, the son of Adam, while the daughters of men belonged to the corrupt line of Cain. According to this view, Genesis is describing the breakdown of a moral and spiritual boundary between two human family lines. A third interpretation sees the sons of God as powerful rulers, kings, or warrior elites. Ancient rulers sometimes claimed divine status or divine ancestry. Under this interpretation, Genesis 6 may be describing powerful men who took women however they desired and produced a violent ruling class. Each theory attempts to explain the same few verses, and the text itself never explicitly tells us which interpretation is correct. This is where the story becomes even more dramatic. An ancient Jewish work known as the Book of Enoch develops the angelic interpretation in extraordinary detail. The Book of Enoch is not part of the biblical canon used by most Jewish and Christian traditions today, although it holds canonical status in the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church. That distinction matters. Enoch should not simply be treated as another chapter of Genesis, but it is extremely important for understanding how some ancient Jewish communities interpreted the mysterious passage in Genesis 6. In the Book of Enoch, a group of angels known as the Watchers descend to Earth. They take human wives and teach humanity knowledge that the story presents as forbidden. Their offspring become enormous and violent beings. According to Enoch, these giants consume the resources of the earth and eventually turn against humanity. Their violence becomes part of the corruption that precedes divine judgment. The Watchers themselves are eventually condemned. This tradition gives us the familiar image of the Nephilim as the monstrous children of rebellious heavenly beings and human women. But remember, Genesis itself does not provide all these details. The Book of Enoch represents an ancient interpretation and expansion of the biblical mystery. The Watchers are one of the most fascinating elements of the Enoch tradition. Their rebellion is not limited to relationships with humans. They are also accused of revealing knowledge that humanity was not meant to possess. Different Watchers are associated with different teachings, weapons, warfare, sorcery, astrology, and other forms of knowledge. The point of the story is not necessarily that every one of these things is inherently evil. The deeper theme is that heavenly beings crossed a boundary and accelerated human corruption by revealing knowledge outside its proper order. This idea appears repeatedly in ancient tradition. Knowledge can build civilization, but knowledge without wisdom can also create destruction. And according to Enoch, the Nephilim were one of the consequences. But this creates another mystery. If the flood destroyed the ancient world, why does the word Nephilim appear again in Numbers? There are several possible explanations. One is that the term was being used more broadly for unusually powerful or gigantic warriors. Another is that the spies were invoking an ancient name to describe how terrifying the inhabitants of Canaan appeared. Some later traditions proposed that descendants of the Nephilim somehow survived. Others suggested that similar events happened again after the flood. But the Bible never clearly explains a survival story. That means claims that the original Nephilim definitely survived Noah's flood go beyond what the biblical text explicitly tells us. What the Bible does describe, however, are later groups remembered for extraordinary size and strength: the Anakim, the Rephaim, and famous warriors such as Goliath. These figures helped keep the biblical tradition of giants alive long after Genesis 6. So, who were the Nephilim? After thousands of years, the most accurate answer may also be the most frustrating. We do not know with certainty. Genesis gives us only a few clues. They existed in the ancient world. They were associated with mighty figures of renown. They appear in a passage involving the mysterious sons of God, and later biblical tradition connects their name with terrifying people of extraordinary size. The Book of Enoch provides the most detailed ancient explanation. The Nephilim were giant offspring of rebellious heavenly beings and human women. But that interpretation goes beyond the information provided directly by Genesis. Other readers understand the passage as describing human rulers, warriors, or the descendants of different family lines. Perhaps that uncertainty is exactly why the Nephilim continue to fascinate people today. Genesis gives us enough information to create a mystery, but not enough to completely solve it. And the Nephilim are only the beginning. The Book of Enoch describes the Watchers, fallen angels, forbidden knowledge, and a rebellion that completely changes the way many ancient readers understood Genesis. In the next episode, we'll explore one of the most mysterious texts connected to this story, the Book of Enoch, and what it really says about the fallen angels. If you enjoy exploring the strange and mysterious passages of ancient scripture, subscribe to the channel. There are many more mysteries still hidden between the lines.